The elevator doors closed with a soft hiss, leaving just the two of us in the amber glow of emergency lighting. Cyrus stepped closer, his breath warm against my neck as he whispered, "We're really doing this, aren't we?" My heart hammered against my ribs as I felt his fingers trace along my waist, finding the edge of my blouse. The late-night office around us felt electric, charged with months of stolen glances and careful conversations that had led us here. I turned to face him, our bodies barely an inch apart, and whispered back, "I've been thinking about this since our first meeting." His hands found the small of my back, pulling me closer until I could feel the steady rhythm of his heartbeat matching mine. Hey, if you're enjoying where this is heading, do me a quick favor and hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means everything, and trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The project deadline was looming, and everyone else had left hours ago. The office felt different after dark, quieter, more intimate, like a secret world that belonged only to us. I'd volunteered to stay late, telling myself it was about the work, but deep down I knew better. Cyrus had been working beside me for weeks now, and the tension between us had grown impossible to ignore. "Want some coffee?" he asked, his voice cutting through the silence as he stood and stretched. I watched the way his shirt pulled across his shoulders, the way his hands moved as he rolled up his sleeves. Everything about him seemed designed to test my resolve. "Sure," I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. But when he returned with 2 steaming mugs, he didn't sit back at his desk. Instead, he perched on the edge of mine, close enough that I caught the faint scent of his cologne mixed with something uniquely him. "You know," he said, his eyes meeting mine over the rim of his cup. "I've been wondering something." "What's that?" I asked, though my pulse quickened as I sensed where this might be heading. "Whether you feel it too." His voice was low, intimate, the kind of tone that sent warmth spreading through my chest. "This thing between us." I set my coffee down with shaking hands. We'd danced around this for months, the lingering looks during meetings, the way our fingers brushed when passing documents, the conversations that always seemed to carry an undercurrent of something more. But hearing him say it out loud made it real, dangerous, irresistible. "Cyrus," I started, but he was already moving closer, his hand coming up to cup my cheek. "I know this complicates things," he murmured, his thumb tracing a gentle line along my jaw. "But I can't stop thinking about you, about us." The rational part of my mind screamed warnings about workplace relationships, about professionalism, about everything we could lose. But his touch silenced those voices, replacing them with something much more primal, much more urgent. "Show me," I whispered, and that was all the invitation he needed. His lips found mine in a kiss that was everything I'd imagined and more. Soft at first, tentative, then deeper as I responded. My hands found their way to his chest, feeling the rapid rhythm of his heart beneath my palms. He tasted like coffee and possibility, like every late-night fantasy I'd tried to push away. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice rough with desire but still giving me the choice. Instead of answering with words, I stood up, my body pressing against his as I reached for the buttons of his shirt. His hands covered mine, stilling them for a moment as he searched my eyes. Whatever he saw there satisfied him, because his grip loosened, allowing me to continue. The fabric fell away, revealing the contours I'd only imagined during those long meetings. My fingers traced the line of his collarbone, down across his chest, feeling him shiver under my touch. He was beautiful in the dim office lighting, all lean muscle and warm skin that seemed to glow in the amber shadows. "Your turn," he said softly, his hands moving to the buttons of my blouse with deliberate slowness. Each one that came undone sent another wave of heat through me, until the silk slipped from my shoulders and pooled at my feet. We moved together like we were choreographing something we'd rehearsed 1,000 times in our minds. His hands spanned my waist, lifting me easily onto the desk as papers scattered around us. The cool surface against my back made me gasp, but his warmth quickly chased away any chill. He kissed a trail down my throat, his lips finding every sensitive spot as if he'd mapped them long ago. My hands tangled in his hair, holding him close as sensation after sensation washed over me. The office around us faded away until there was nothing but this moment, this connection that had been building for months. "You're incredible," he murmured, against my skin, his hands exploring with reverent care. Every touch sent sparks through me, building a fire that threatened to consume everything in its path. I pulled him up to meet my lips again, pouring all my pent-up longing into the kiss. His body pressed against mine, solid and warm and perfect. The desk creaked softly beneath us, but neither of us cared about anything beyond this stolen moment. His hands traced patterns on my skin that seemed to bypass my brain and speak directly to my body. I arched against him, desperate for more contact, more of everything he was offering. The months of professional distance dissolved, replaced by this raw, honest hunger that demanded satisfaction. "I want you," I breathed against his ear, feeling him shudder at the words. "Right here, right now." He pulled back to look at me, his eyes dark with desire but still searching for confirmation. "Lillian, are you absolutely certain? Once we cross this line—" "I've been certain for months," I interrupted, my hands moving to his belt. I just needed the courage to admit it. The sound of fabric rustling filled the quiet office as we helped each other out of the remaining barriers between us. Every new inch of skin revealed was worshipped with touches and kisses, building the anticipation to an almost unbearable level. When he finally positioned himself above me, both of us trembling with need, time seemed to slow. His eyes locked, with mine as he whispered, "Tell me what you want." "You," I said simply. "All of you." He moved with careful control, letting me adjust to him, watching my face for any sign of discomfort. But there was none, only the overwhelming rightness of finally being connected like this, of having him fill the emptiness I'd been carrying for so long. We found our rhythm together, moving in perfect synchronization as if we'd been lovers for years instead of colleagues who'd been dancing around each other. Every thrust sent waves of pleasure through me, building and building until I thought I might shatter from the intensity. His lips found mine again, swallowing the sounds that escaped, as he drove deeper, harder, chasing something that felt almost spiritual in its intensity. My legs wrapped around him, pulling him closer, deeper, until there was no space left between us. "You feel so good," he groaned against my throat, his voice strained with the effort of holding back. "So perfect." I could only respond with wordless cries as he hit that spot inside me that made stars explode behind my eyelids. The coil of tension in my core wound tighter and tighter until I was sure it would snap, taking my sanity with it. "Don't stop," I gasped, my nails digging into his shoulders as I climbed higher. "Please don't stop." He didn't. If anything, his movements became more purposeful, more intense, as if he could sense how close I was to the edge. His hand slipped between us, finding that sensitive bundle of nerves and stroking it in time with his movements. The combination was my undoing. I came apart with a cry that echoed through the empty office, my body clenching around him as wave after wave of release crashed over me. He followed moments later, his own completion triggering aftershocks that left us both gasping and trembling. We stayed like that for long moments, hearts racing, breath slowly returning to normal. The reality of what we'd just done began to seep back and around the edges of my post-climactic haze. "Wow," he said softly, pressing a gentle kiss to my temple. "That was incredible," I finished, still too blissful to worry about the consequences. But as we slowly disentangled and began searching for our scattered clothes, the weight of what we'd done settled over me like a heavy blanket. This changed everything. There was no going back to the careful professionalism we'd maintained before. "Hey," Cyrus said, noticing my sudden tension as I fumbled with the buttons of my blouse. "What's wrong?" This is so complicated," I said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "What are people going to think? What if someone finds out? What if this affects our work?" He caught my hands in his, stilling their nervous movement. "Lillian, look at me." When I reluctantly met his eyes, he continued, "We don't have to figure everything out tonight. What matters is how we feel about each other." "And how do you feel?" I asked, hating how vulnerable I sounded. His smile was soft, genuine. "Like I want to do this again. And again. Like maybe we stumbled onto something really special here." Before I could respond, the sound of the elevator chiming made us both freeze. Panic shot through me as we heard voices approaching, the cleaning crew making their rounds. "Quick," Cyrus whispered, and we scrambled to make ourselves presentable. By the time the janitor appeared at our department, we were seated at separate desks, files spread out between us, looking for all the world like dedicated employees burning the midnight oil. "Working late again?" the janitor asked with a knowing smile. "Big deadline," I managed, proud that my voice sounded normal despite my racing heart. After he moved on, Cyrus and I exchanged a look that was part relief, part amusement, and part lingering heat. The near miss had been a stark reminder of just how risky what we'd done really was. "We should probably call it a night," he said quietly, beginning to pack up his things. I nodded, though part of me wanted to pull him back into my arms, consequences be damned. Instead, I focused on gathering my own belongings, hyper-aware of his every movement as he prepared to leave. At the elevator, he paused. "Lillian, I meant what I said, about wanting to explore this." "I know," I replied. "I want that too. I'm just scared." "So am I," he admitted, "but some things are worth being scared for." The elevator arrived and we rode down in charged silence. In the parking garage, he walked me to my car, his hand briefly touching my lower back, a gesture so simple, yet so loaded with meaning after what we'd shared. Sweet dreams, he said, leaning down to press a soft kiss to my cheek. I drove home in a daze, my body still humming with the memory of his touch. Every traffic light gave me time to replay moments from our encounter, the way his hands had felt on my skin, the sound he'd made when I'd first touched him, the intense look in his eyes as we'd moved together. But alongside the warmth and satisfaction came waves of anxiety. What had we started? How could we possibly navigate this at work? The questions chased each other around my mind until I finally fell into a restless sleep. The next morning came too soon, bringing with it all the doubts I'd been too blissful to acknowledge the night before. I spent extra time getting ready, changing outfits 3 times before settling on something that looked professional but not overly conservative. I wanted to look good for him, but not so good that anyone would wonder why. The office felt different as I walked in. Every surface held memories of the night before, the desk where he'd lifted me, the conference room where we'd shared so many meaningful looks, even the elevator where we'd finally admitted our feelings. I was so lost in my thoughts that I didn't notice Cyrus approaching until he was right beside me. "Good morning," he said, his voice carefully neutral, but his eyes warm with private knowledge. "Morning," I replied, hyper-aware of how close he was standing, of the way his cologne made me want to lean closer. "Sleep well?" he asked, and there was definitely a hint of mischief in his tone. "Eventually," I said, giving him a look that conveyed exactly what had kept me awake. Throughout the morning, we maintained perfect professionalism in front of our colleagues. But there were moments when he handed me a file and our fingers brushed, when he leaned over my shoulder to point something out on my screen, when our eyes met across the conference table during a meeting that crackled with the memory of what we'd shared. By lunch, the tension was almost unbearable. I was heading to the break room when I felt a hand on my arm, gently steering me into an empty conference room. Cyrus closed the door behind us and immediately pulled me into his arms. "I've been thinking about you all morning," he murmured before, capturing my lips in a kiss that was hungry, desperate, full of everything we couldn't say in public. I melted against him, all my earlier anxiety forgotten in the face of this overwhelming need. His hands tangled in my hair as I pressed closer, wanting to lose myself in him again, but the sound of voices in the hallway forced us apart, both breathing hard. "We can't keep doing this here," I whispered, even as every cell in my body protested the distance between us. "I know," he agreed. "My place tonight?" The invitation hung between us, loaded with promise and possibility. I knew that saying yes would change everything, would make this more than just a moment of madness in an empty office. But looking into his eyes, seeing the genuine care alongside the desire, I realized I was already in too deep to turn back now. "Yes," I said, and his smile was brilliant. The rest of the day passed in a haze of anticipation. Every routine task felt surreal, like I was acting a part while my real self counted down the minutes until I could be with him again. We were careful to maintain our professional distance, but I caught him watching me when he thought no one would notice, his gaze heating my skin even across a crowded room. Finally, mercifully, 5 o'clock arrived. I made my excuses and left, quickly, my heart racing as I drove to the address he'd texted me. His apartment was in a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and industrial fixtures that somehow managed to feel warm and inviting. He opened the door before I could knock, as if he'd been waiting by the window. "Hi," he said softly, and suddenly, all my nervousness evaporated. "Hi yourself," I replied, stepping into his space, into his arms, into whatever this was becoming between us. This time, there was no urgency, no fear of discovery. He led me slowly through his apartment, showing me pieces of his life I'd never seen, books that revealed his interests, photos that told stories of adventures and friendships, little details that made him real beyond the professional facade we maintained at work. When we finally made our way to his bedroom, it felt natural, inevitable. We undressed each other with the reverence of new lovers and the familiarity of people who'd been moving toward this moment for months. His bed was soft beneath us as we explored each other thoroughly, learning what made the other gasp and sigh and cry out in pleasure. There was no desk between us now, no time pressure, no fear of interruption, just the two of us discovering this connection that had been hiding in plain sight. He worshipped my body with his hands and mouth, finding sensitive spots I'd forgotten. I returned the favor, reveling in the sounds he made, the way his muscles tensed under my touch, the way he whispered my name like a prayer. When we finally came together again, it was with a sweetness that brought tears to my eyes. This wasn't just physical anymore. It was emotional, spiritual, a joining that transcended the simple meeting of bodies. Afterward, we lay tangled together, skin cooling in the dim light filtering through his blinds. His fingers traced lazy patterns on my back as I listened to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. What happens now? I asked, voicing the question that had been lurking at the edges of my mind all day. Now we figure it out together, he said, pressing a kiss to the top of my head. We're adults, Lillian. We can handle this responsibly. Can we? I asked. What about work protocols? What about gossip? What if someone finds out and we both get in trouble? He was quiet for a moment, his hand stilling on my back. Are you having second thoughts? I lifted my head to look at him, seeing genuine concern in his eyes. No, I said firmly. I don't regret this. Either time. I'm just scared of the complications. Then we'll be careful, he said. We'll keep it professional at work, at least, until we figure out where this is going. And if anyone does find out, we'll deal with it then. Together. The confidence in his voice was reassuring, but I could still feel the weight of all the ways this could go wrong. Still, looking down at him, seeing the way he was looking at me, I knew I was willing to risk it. Okay, I said, but we have to be smart about this. No more conference room kisses, no matter how much I want them. He grinned. Deal. Though you're going to have to stop looking at me the way you have been today if you want me to keep my hands to myself. What way? I asked innocently. Like you're remembering exactly what I can do with my hands, he said, demonstrating by running them along my sides in a way that made me shiver. Maybe I am, I admitted, leaning down to kiss him again. We made love once more before I reluctantly dressed to go home, both of us knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges as we tried to navigate this relationship within the confines of our professional lives. But as I drove home, windows down to clear my head, I realized that despite all the potential complications, I'd never felt more alive. Whatever happened next, we'd face it together. And maybe, just maybe, we could make this work. The thought of seeing him tomorrow, of maintaining our professional facades while carrying this delicious secret between us, sent a thrill through me that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with anticipation. Some secrets I realized were worth keeping, especially when they led to something this extraordinary, this unexpected, this perfectly imperfect. So, what would you do if you found yourself falling for a coworker? Would you risk it all for a chance at something real or play it safe? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one and love hearing your thoughts. And if this story got your heart racing, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and turn on notifications so you never miss when things get interesting. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.